Welcome on YouTube and Dawn community to my first beginner build guide that actually is fully supported by a full playthrough VOD series on YouTube as well. I'm gonna start making a couple of these and include them as well as other builds from other people into a overview video which is gonna feature some of the best beginner builds from 2020. So in this video I'm gonna highlight the dual wield melee cold spellbreaker. Are you looking for a beginner friendly guide for a dual wield knightblade? Do you want a fast mat and dungeon farmer? A build that has very good single target DPS and deletes the main campaign content without any struggles? Are you looking for a build that plays like a rogue with very high mobility and high damage? Well, this build is gonna be for you. This guide is also supported by a full hardcore playthrough through all difficulties all the way to ultimate low-car, which you can check out in the description below. So technically this is a very much hardcore viable build. However, Spellbreaker is not like the tankiest build out there. It's not as tanky as some, say, retaliation tanks, soldiers, or vitality casters. And it also cannot kite as well as like cooldown reduction based or damage over time based casters. So overall, I would not recommend this as your very first hardcore character, but for softcore, I can very much recommend it. And also, for hardcore, you can still play this if you really want to play a Nightblade. Alright, so you've just created your character, you just hit the play button and you find yourself in the game. Now you wonder where to go. Well, you obviously pick up the first quest and make your way through Lowest Crossing. In Lowest Crossing you have up to 4 items you can get. Number 1, Francis's gun. Number 2, Heavy's greatsword, and number 3, Ormond's axe. Also, after Ormond's axe you will find the boss called Barrack, and this guy has the chance to drop you his bloody arm, which can be a pretty nice like second one-hander early on for Nightblade. So once you have that one, or like another good one-hander, you wanna use that alongside your Ormond's axe and start dual wielding. Now how do you dual wield as a Nightblade and how do you want to do your skill allocation in the first couple of levels? In level 2 you're gonna get 1 point into the mastery bar, 1 point into blade burst, and 1 point into dual blades. Dual blades enables you to dual wield, and blade burst is like a small AoE, which is not technically a default attack replacer, but you can use it on your like left or right mouse button and treat it as a default attack replacer for a pretty long time. Like whenever you hold down the mouse button and that ability is on cooldown, your character will start using default attacks instead. So you don't have to like worry about like having another button for default attacks alongside Amarasta's Blade Burst. And then you proceed to put 1 point down here and 2 points into Blade Burst on like level 3, level 4, level 5. Now once you have around 7 points into ABB, you don't need to put more than that here. You just could proceed and pick up these skills, Primitive Burst and Golgothian Shears. And now you want to get to 15 points pretty soon. Also pick up the Shadow Strike ability at 10 points. And once you have arrived at 15 points, you want to make sure to pick up Lethal Assault alongside Knight's Chill down here, so you want to start using Veil of Shadow and Knight's Chill. You also want to put 1 pointers into Shadow Dance, AQC, and Phantasma Armor. And now you will start working on maxing out Lethal Assault. This is going to give you lots of flat damage and basically all the flat damage for single target damage that you need. After that, it will be good to put points into Knight's Chill for AoE damage and AoE resistance reduction, Dramatic Burst for total speed and healing, Veil of Shadow for more radius on this aura, points into your Master Bar for overall tankiness and also for unlocking new skills, such as for example 1 pointers into Anatomy of Murder and Ring of Steel, as well as Wording Death. Also, if you're playing Ring of Steel and you're playing this kind of cold damage Nightblade, you should also pick up the Ring of Frost to convert that pierce damage into cold damage and also for better CC in the form of freeze. Now when it comes to items in Act 1, Ormond's axe, Barrack's bloody arm, and any high attack speed one-hander, especially swords and daggers with like cold damage attack speed, are gonna be good for you. Additionally, you can find Isak's Spoilers, the Slith Prime Ring, and the Ring of Wheel of the Corruptor, as well as Milton's Cask. Other side quest items include the Sister's Amulet of Life-Giving and the Fortified Doublet. Also, if you're lucky enough to get to the Pruted Necklace from Primordial, the Forgotten One, you should consider picking up Arcanist at level 10 and putting a 1 pointer into Iskandar's Elemental Exchange. Now when it comes to devotions, in Act 1 you're gonna get a total of 7 points, so you should use those early on, especially for movement speed. So 2 points into Jackal, as well as either 3 points into Sailor's Guide or 3 points into Eel is what you want to get. Now with a setup like this, you should be easily able to kill Warden Krieg, and after that proceed into either Act 2, or if you have the Forgotten Gods expansion, proceed into Act 7. We did it! Woohoo! Alright, Warden Krieg down. What I generally would recommend is to proceed with Act 2, however, before you proceed with Act 2, you go into Act 7 and you do the very first quest, and then you choose one of the 3 factions, and then you can buy the rune augments, which give you a movement ability from the faction that you chose at their faction vendor. Let's check them out, right? Bismiel gives you Vanish and Leap. Vanish is basically like a Shadow Strike as well, and Leap as well. It's a Leap, right? Then you have Cut of Dreek, which has Charge and Rift Tear. Rift Tear is basically a teleport, and Charge is like a Blitz-like ability, so it works kind of like the Soldier's Blitz ability. So it requires you to have a melee weapon, and also it requires you to click on a target. Solile, which gives you a Rush. Rush basically works the same way as Oathkeeper's Wire Smite. So you just charge forward, you add the shield's damage, and you don't need a target. Disengage is like a disengage, like you jump backwards, so it's kind of meh. I mean, it can be good for like ranged builds. Another thing that you should do for Act 2 and also future acts is to, from now on, make sure to always have a component in every single slot, even if it's only a polished emerald. Components help you out a lot for damage, raw stats, as well as resistances. So let's start with the weapons. Once you are level 20, you need to go to the smith and craft a cold stone. This is just insanely strong. This will give you flat cold damage, convert from physical to cold damage if you have like a physical weapon, and also will give you the chilling weapons aura that you like put on your bar or in like a second skill bar, and does that thing stack. So you can actually use 2 of these, and both will give you even more like percent as well as flat cold damage, and this will basically give you insane damage for level 20 and further. You can basically use this component all the way from level 20 to 100, it's that good. Alternatively, if you are lacking resistances, you could use a Purified Salt in your weapon for Aether resistance and defensive ability, or you can use a Imbued Silver for bleeding and chaos resistance on the aura. However, I would not recommend this on normal difficulty. You can use these instead of cold stones on high difficulties if you really struggle like fixing the resistances, but otherwise just go for cold stones. They just give you way too much damage. Now for armor pieces, make sure to use a unholy inscription on your gloves once you find us. Make sure to use something with flat armor in your belt, because belt armor is global armor. It will apply to all pieces, whereas flat armor on components that you like put on other pieces of your armor will only apply to that armor locally. So you gain overall 6 times the effectiveness from putting flat armor components into your belt compared to other parts of your armor. So the good craftable components that you can use starting at level 15 actually are Anti-Venom Salve, Dense Fur, Molten Skin, and Rigid Shell. A very good head component is the Runestone. You, however, need to find the rovers first in Act 2 and start becoming friendly with them, and then you can buy this blueprint and then you can craft the Runestone. The Runestone is very good in your headpiece armor, but until you get this one, you're totally fine just using a polished emerald. And for your chest, you could use a Silk Swatch for pierce and bleed resistance, a resilient plating for pierce resistance and defensive ability, as well as a little bit of armor, an ancient armor plate if you find one, later on even Shades of Oreron, or Kyrian Shattered Soul if you find us from Kyrian in the Undercity. Or even later maybe a Hallowed Ground for like defensive ability and elemental resistances if you are lacking those. On your shoulders, I can recommend you to use either a Bristle Fur for HP early on, then later maybe a Scaled Hide for armor and armor absorption, or even mutated scales for even more HP, or also a Silk Swatch for pierce and bleed resistances. For the boots, very early as well, you can just use the Bristle Fur. Any of these craftable components for resistances. Note that these are, again, not as good as in your boots or like any other armor piece compared to your belt. But yeah, you can actually use these in all of the armor pieces. Depending on like how much resistances you still lack, you might have to like craft some more Anti-Venom Salves, for example. A superb component, however, is the Mark of the Traveler. This one is very good in boots and can be used all the way from level 20 to 100 for the slow resistance as well as the movement speed. Also for boots, Bristle Fur, Scaled Hide, any of these for resistance giving components, right, or mutated scales, or also Silk Swatch actually for pierce and bleed rest if you are in need of that. Now for rings, amulets, and medals, early on just like slap on polished emeralds on all of these, right. If you have some like freeze or petrify resistance problems, you can also use frozen hearts. Then you could use corpse dust in Act 2 once you find some of these, like in Act 1 and 2. Corpse dust is pretty nice to like give you more HP and wit resistances. And then later on you wanna probably always, or like pretty much always use 2 soul shards in your rings, unless you already have like insane vitality resistances, because these are like a very cheap way to give you like 40% vitreous. For amulet and the medal, you can also use corpse dust or soul shards, or you can use wardstone, which is like an easy to craft, which also gives you like 6% movement speed. So I like this a lot early on, and you can even use it from level 11 on, very good. Or if you are lacking Aetherus and Aether Soul, however, you need to like buy the blueprint from Devil's Crossing first, or the Black Tallow, which you have to get from Kymon's Chosen or Vigil in Act 3. So this will not be accessible for you early on, but once you are in Act 3 and you're facing more Chthonians, which have like more chaos damage in Act 3 and 4, this will become pretty useful. Also, if you're not in need of any resistances, but you just want more attack speed, more damage, you can also always use a Vicious Jawbone later on for attack speed, or a Dread Skull for total speed. Now for your relic slot, you either want to use a Ruination, which is a baseline craft from the smith, so you can use this one. However, it does require you to have a Tainted Brain Matter, which ideally you should have gotten from Warden Krieg, but maybe you weren't that lucky. So now you can either choose to refarm Krieg until you get the Tainted Brain Matter, or just live with not having this relic and try to get the Bone Talisman relic in Act 2 instead, which you can get easily from the Rover Elder quest in Act 2. You simply just have to lie to them and keep the talisman for yourself, and then their talisman will transform into a relic, which is like usable for yourself. Also, Act 1 has actually 2 more medals that you can look out for. Number 1, the Gutworm's Mark, and number 2, the Gale Slice Mark. These two are very good for cold damage knockbats as well, especially the Gale Slice's Mark actually. But these aren't like that easy to kill, so I would recommend you to do these after you've killed Warden Krieg. While you proceed through Act 2, you're gonna find some bandits, also some undead in the form of skeletons or ghosts, and the ghosts have these spectral longswords that they can drop, as well as spectral battle axes. Both of them are really good for a cold damage knockblade, especially a breaker, with the spectral battle axe giving you weapon damage and +3 to warding death, which is one of the weapon pool skills that you're gonna use, and the spectral longsword giving you pierce to cold conversion and CDR and skill bonuses towards Shadow Strike. On top of that, these items, like all the green items, like all the green monster freak ones in the game, can roll with an additional prefix and an additional suffix. You want to look out for either cold damage ones like Glacial, Chilled, or Frostbite, of Restless Flurry, or you want to look for attack speed ones like of Alacrity, or you want to look for a lifesteal prefix in the form of either Vampiric or Dreadlords. But don't like waste too much time farming these while leveling. Take like the best one that you got and that should be fine enough to like carry you through normal difficulty. Also, the Crony Signet, the ring from Darius Crony himself, has attack speed as a base, and if you get maybe some additional resistance affixes on top, that would be great and like very good ring to use as well. Now when it comes to your skill allocation up to say around level 40, you wanna make sure to max out your Veil of Shadow, also max out your Pneumatic Burst, and also take a 1 point into Breath of Morgoneth, as well as putting Dual Blades to 5 points, pushing all the way to 50 attribute points, getting a 1 point into Circle of Slaughter as a 1 pointer here. This is going to be especially good when you're, for example, using Crony's Signet, putting 1 pointers into Nadal's Justifiable Ends and Nightfall, as well as Blade Spirit, and also make sure to get at least 4 points into Execution to have like 90% chance to use this. Additionally, you could also always take a 1 pointer into Blade Barrier to kind of have like a panic button to press whenever you feel like you need a panic button. If you check out the grimtools in the description of my videos from Mageslayer Spellbreaker that I did like a couple of patches ago, you will see that back then I didn't put as many points into Pneumatic Burst, and that is because back then the OA from Pneumatic Burst was actually on Lethal Assault, so Lethal Assault was like more powerful back then, but Pneumatic Burst was worse. So now you kind of need to like max out both of them while leveling, and also get the Breath of Morgoneth earlier than back then, because like you are gonna get more healing through Pneumatic Burst, and you want that heal on a lower cooldown obviously. Also, you want Dual Blades to 5 points, because every point up to 5 points gives you 1% physical resistance, which is also very good. And also at this point you can put down your Restless Blade Burst down to a 1 pointer again. You will have more than enough AoE from like your regular steel and also like devotion procs. Speaking of devotions, you should absolutely make your way towards the Rumor. Rumor is a must-have for every single cold damage build in the game. This one gives you 23 or like up to 23 cold resistance reduction on max level, and also has like some cold damage and avoidance on its nodes. Also, another devotion you should get either before Murmur or after Murmur at the very least is the Ghoul Devotion. The Ghoul Devotion has a Circuit Breaker kind of ability that procs at 45% of your HP, which will give you insane attack speed, lifesteal, and physical resistance. Also, the nodes give you like some overall tankiness in the form of like physique, DA, health, and lifesteal. To grab Ghoul and Murmur even quicker than in this case, you certainly can go for Eel instead of Sailor's Guide, and get Ghoul instead of Jackal once you have like good enough movement speed. Also, once you have completed the spider, you can also retake the green point here, because you only need 6 greens to start working on Rumor. So you can actually get to a completed Ghoul and a completed Murmur at only 20 devotion points. Now, once you have killed the amalgamation and you are back in Homestead and you are asked to choose a faction, choose the Chosen. You should choose Kymon's Chosen, because only then you are able to kill Malkadar, a boss that will spawn later in early Act 4 in the Tomb of the Archon. And that boss has the Malkadar's Dreadblade as a drop. Malkadar's Dreadblade is just a crazy strong item for any cold damage knockblade, gives you bonuses and weapon damage to execution, and also bonus attack speed, chaos resistance, and percent cold damage. Just make sure that you have the Kymon's chosen quest before you go here. Wait, oh, he doesn't even spawn if you don't have the quest, really? Also, once you have the required reputation, buy the Black Tallow blueprint as well as the Blessed Steel blueprint from Kymon's chosen, which you can use to either craft a Black Tallow for the Chaos Rest, or a Blessed Steel, which you can use as an alternative as a one-off instead of a cold stone in your weapons because of the Sacred Strike ability. Sacred Strike is basically a nuke that also has 20 flat resistance reduction, which is very helpful until you get your flat resistance reduction devotions, such as Elemental Storm, Revenant, Manticore, or Tip the Scales. Note that this type of resistance reduction does not stack with other resistance reductions of the same type. So don't use Blessed Steel alongside Elemental Storm, for example, they don't stack. Use either one of those devotions or Blessed Steel. Speaking of faction blueprints, you should also buy the Legion belt from the Black Legion as soon as possible. And craft yourself a Legion belt. This one gives you +1 on all skills to not blade, as well as some additional cold damage. And this can also roll with 1 additional either pre or suffix. And you can also use this from level 35 on, so the earlier you get the blueprint, the better. Additionally, if you want to do the challenge dungeon, the Steps of Torment, there's a boss down there called Ilgor the Eternal, who can drop you the Ilgor's Eternal Curse, which also gives you bonuses towards Amarys's Blade Burst, and also more weapon damage to Amarys's Blade Burst, as well as some like HP and cold damage. So if you go there and you're lucky enough to get this one, make sure to use it. Now your character should be very strong and ready to go into the Ashes of Malmouth expansion. So ideally you want to start out with Act 5, go through Gloomwald to the Coven of the Agdenborg, go through the entire Agdenborg, go to Barrowholm, choose to either become friendly or hostile with them. It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, they have pretty good augments, which can be very helpful for your playthrough. However, if you just don't like them, feel free to just kill them. However, if you want to kill the super boss Ravager, which you probably won't do in normal anyways, because it's kind of like a thing that you should do in Elite or Ultimate, then you should side with them. More interesting than all of that, however, is the Ancient Grove dungeon. The Ancient Grove is another Skeleton Key challenge dungeon, which you can basically do as soon as you have entered the Agdenborg. This dungeon is quite hard and quite challenging, so try to not die here. However, it is very much worth it because there is a vendor down there called Vinalton, and he has a chance to sell you the Prismatic Diamond as well as the Shroud of Baranoth blueprint, as well as maybe some well-rolled living rings which can like boost your HP and resistances by quite a bit. Now the Prismatic Diamond is basically the best in slot component in the entire game for a build like this, because it also has a circuit breaker that activates at 50% of your HP, which modifies your damage by 10% and also gives you 130 flat absorption, which will absorb from each damage source that will hit you during its uptime and also give you 10% total speed during its uptime. While the Shroud of Baranoth is a weapon component that has the Baranoth's Fury active ability, which basically acts as a default attack replacer. So you can use this as a default attack and use it on your left or right mouse button, for example, to like hold this down whenever all your other buttons are a cooldown. It should, however, not substitute Amarys's Blade Burst. You should still use Amarys's Blade Burst as like another skill on your skill bar, just for the buff through Lethal Assault. After that, feel free to progress freely through the Ashes of Malmouth expansion, as well as Forgotten Gods. Make sure to not forget about any factions in order to start gaining faction reputation, which is going to be very important for higher difficulties, while roughly following the skill allocation for Arcanist, as well as the devotion points, as I'm gonna show you now. So after getting the Legion belt and the 2 Makadar Dreadblades, your Nightblade's skill allocation should look something like this here. If you need more pierce resistance and more armor, feel free to also soft cap if it has no armor, and also if you need more defensive ability and more dodge, feel free to also soft cap Shadow Dance. Also additionally, if you need more elemental resistances, feel free to also soft cap Elemental Awakening or like put as many points into these as you feel like is necessary. Additionally, you could also max out execution to have like an even stronger nuke whenever this drops. Other than that, let's move on to Arcanist. So the Arcanist class for Spellbreaker is going to be your support class. So what you want here is you want 1 point into Iskander's Elemental Exchange. It's not really worth it to put more points here. I mean, the flat damage here might seem like it's a good idea to put more points here, but it's really not that worth it. What you want to get is the offensive ability as well as the Aether resistance from Overload. Put as many points as you need here up to the soft cap for offensive ability and Aether resistance that you need to also like cap out your Aether resistance. Then also as soon as you have 10 points, you should always put a 1 point into Mirror of Eroctius. This is very useful. This is a super good panic button, and honestly, once you have the mirror, you should probably get rid of your Blade Barrier if you even had it in the first place. This is just a straight up upgrade compared to Blade Barrier, because this one still allows you to attack the enemy while you are invulnerable, Moving on, you also want a 1 pointer into inner focus for now. You will put more points here later, however for now 1 point is enough. And you will start making your way towards like 1 pointing Arcane Will, 1 pointing Nullification, and also 1 pointing Mavens. And also actually you should start maxing out Maven's Sphere of Protection after grabbing Nullification. Now why do you want to get Maven's Sphere of Protection? Maven's Sphere of Protection is a free 5, 8, 10 and then 1% damage absorption per point up to 12 points. Actually the last point here gives you 2% absorption again, and 20% absorption for 12 points is actually insane. Like that's a lot. That's actually more than all the exclusive skills in the game have, so this will basically give you 20% more effective HP. Now Nullification is a very unique but also very powerful skill in the game. Nullification does not only reduce enemy elemental damage by 10% at 1 point, but also it will cleanse yourself from debuffs and also cleanse enemies from all of their buffs. And that is super powerful. The timing on this, however, is not the easiest, and you will need to understand the game a lot. Whenever you have a debuff on yourself, you can always pause the game and then actually like check them out by hovering over the icons over your energy bar to like see which kind of debuff you have on yourself, and then choose whether or not you want to actually nullify that debuff. Additionally, this helps a lot with, for example, nullifying enemies that have either a reflect aura or that are invulnerable because they are using the mirror spell themselves. You can also nullify things like swift auras from swift enemies to slow them down, remove bubbles from enemies to like remove their damage absorption and stuff like that. So nullification is super useful. And learning how to properly use that skill is gonna make the difference between a good and a bad Spellbreaker player. Now moving on with the skill allocation up to level 60 and beyond, you're gonna put more points down here, 1 point elemental balance, and then proceed towards conversion. You want to put at least 2 points into conversion for like the 10% CC resistances, and if you need more CC resistances, this skill has very nice sweet spots at 6 out of 10, as well as 9 out of 10. Metal Alacrity, you can kind of skip this one on the breaker, but like 1 point, especially if you have like plus skills to Arcanist for some reason, then this is actually like okay to use as a 1 pointer as well, just to like get some more energy, some skill energy cost reduction, and also like some casting speed to like, for example, cast Nullification quicker. Now one last thing that you should make sure to do before you go into higher difficulties is to get a better relic. And for a cold damage mobblade like this, I can definitely suggest you to get the Death Chill relic. If you don't have the Death Chill relic by the end of your normal playthrough, you can always go to High Realm in Seaclap District and he will sell you random relic blueprints. You can sell basically all tier 1 and tier 2 relic blueprints except for stuff like Mistborn Talisman, which you will have to find from a troll. So basically what you want to do is you want to buy all these blueprints here that you don't have yet, and then reset the game and talk to them again. Every time you reset your game, this vendor will reset and you will be able to buy new blueprints. Alternatively, you can also reset vendors by talking to 2 other random vendors before going back to the vendor. You can basically repeat this until you have all the tier 1 and tier 2 relics in the game, and then you will be definitely able to craft Death Chill. Moving into higher difficulties, you will gain the remaining points here, and you should just put these into the mastery bar to get like a 1 point into Fabric of Reality as well as points into Star Pact. Now for Star Pact you just want to max this out. This will give you flat frostburn, % cold, % frostburn damage, 8th to cold conversion as well as cooldown reduction. However, keep in mind that the sweet spots for the cooldown reduction are going to be the uneven points, so like 11 and 13 and so on. So this will give you like +1 CDR for each like uneven point, at least after the initial 9 points. After all of that, it's finally time to max out inner focus and maybe like put Mirror of Erectus to like 7 points to like have a lower cooldown on this ability, or also like put Nullification up to 10 points to also have a way lower cooldown on this, and also to reduce enemy elemental damage by 33%. And last but not least, you can also like max out your Shadow Dance, your Phantasmal Armor, Elemental Awakening, Execution, maybe instead of or on top of Nullification, depending on like how many skill bonuses you have to your masteries and also which skills you prefer to use. Moving on to high difficulties in endgame, make sure to always have your resistances maxed out to 80% and even overcapped by like at least 30 to 40%. For some like elemental, it's even better to overcap them by more than 40%. And for attribute points, just make sure to dump them all into physique. You don't need any cunning, you don't need any spirit as a Spellbreaker. You have more than enough damage, you just need to be a little bit tankier because Spellbreaker is kind of a squishier class. Now for endgame devotions, make sure to have at least one of the 3 flat resistance reduction devotions, like Elemental Storm for example, and then get some of the cold tier 3 devotions, such as either Ugol with Black Blood of Ugol, which also is very good for breakers because it does reduce all damage to enemies. That's actually very good now for breakers, I like this a lot. Or maybe Ultos for the lightning and cold damage, as well as the percent elemental resistance reduction, or Leviathan for the huge cold damage on all of its nodes, as well as the Whirlpool proc, or maybe even some tankier like all around defensive devotions such as Obelisk of Men here, just some nodes here. Obviously don't want the active, which only works with the shield. Some tier 2 devotions you could use in between, for example, are the Chariot, Amatok the Spirit of Winter, and Oclane's Lantern if you are using a Scepter or Dagger at least, or maybe even Harvestman's Scythe. Other good tier 1 devotions I haven't mentioned yet are Viper, which basically has the same elemental resistance reduction shred as Ultos, so make sure to not use Viper and Ultos at the same time, use either or. And also, actually the Tortoise, especially when you're playing hardcore and you're like not too experienced yet, Tortoise can like save your ass sometimes. That's pretty decent. I also want to highlight some items that you can get in Elite and Ultimate that can like help you out with damage as well as resistances, as well as bonuses to skills. Number 1 being Elena's Necklace. Elena's Necklace has +1 to all skills to Nightblade and also +2 to Star Pack, so it's actually perfect for a Breaker, and also some like additional Frostburn and cold damage towards Veil of Shadow as well as Star Pact. This one drops from Elena, the First Lith, which is a mob that you can only get to if you have a quest from Devil's Crossing, which requires you to have a certain amount of reputation. Once you have that reputation, you will be able to speak to Kasparov in Devil's Crossing and then go over to Hargate's Isle and farm her down in her cellar. The next one is Fettened Mask. This mask actually also drops on normal, but on normal it does not have +1 to all skills anymore. It only has +1 to all skills in either Elite or Ultimate. On Elite you're gonna get the level 75 version, and on Ultimate you're gonna get the level 94 version. So once you are level 75 and you are an Elite, make sure to grab this item. You will find it near the Covern Sands Rift in a, well, slightly hidden place. Another item would be the Locksmir's Frostblade. This one drops from Locksmir Nightmage, a very cheesy hero mob in Plains of Strife that can actually only spawn Elite and Ultimate. You will not be able to find this guy on normal. And why is he so cheesy? Well, he can nullify you from all of your buffs, he can Blade Trap you and then like Shadow Strike on you, and he deals lots of damage, especially when like all of your buffs are down. So do approach this guy with caution, and if you're playing hardcore and you're not too experienced with this guy, maybe just skip him actually, or like prepare your clusters. However, if you manage to kill him and get his daggers are very nice, very good for Shadow Strike, as you can see. This one also pairs very well with a Spectral Longsword. Also another boss that you can farm is Genaxia, which you can like farm pretty easily outside of the Ugnenborg Coven of the Ugnenborg Rift. Right, you go over here to Genaxia's Den, and then you farm Genaxia in there. So you can basically drop 3 different strifes: a Flame Strife, a Chill Strife, and a Storm Strife. The one that you want to look for on a Spellbreaker is the Chill Strife, which has flat cold damage and high attack speed as a base, as well as % cold and frostburn damage, offensive ability, 8 resistances, +2 to Night's Chill, and additional cold damage and cold resistance reduction to Veil of Shadow on its modifier. And this is just a really great dagger. I would say this is overall, out of all the items for a Spellbreaker, probably the best item. However, you need to like get some very good affixes on this one to make this one actually better than other endgame alternatives, such as the Makadar swords, Locksmir daggers, or items like Chillheart, Christian Moon, Beacon of Winter's Veil, as well as Herald of Amatok. Also don't forget to check out the pants that drop from the Hidden Path bosses such as Drieg, Solal, and Bismiel. And last but not least, I wanna again stress the importance of factions, because with faction reputation you will gain access towards blueprints, faction items, as well as augments. Augments are another like type of component you can put on top of your gear, on top of the components. So basically every item can have a component and an augment. And augments are gonna help you out a lot to fix the resistances for higher difficulties, since you're gonna lose 25% resistances to the upper row when going from normal to elite, and another 25% to the upper and the lower row whenever you go from elite to ultimate. Also, once you have reached honor status with a faction, make sure to instantly buy the writ. The writs are gonna speed up your reputation gain by a lot, and thus you will gain access to more powerful augments and items from factions even faster. So yeah, I hope you're gonna have some fun playing as Spellbreaker or any other code not played. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you so much for supporting me on Twitch as well as on Patreon. If you like my content and you want to support me as well, feel free to check out the Patreon link down below. Patreon is, after all, the best way to support me right now, and I hope to see you around on my next video or on my next live stream. See you around and take care.